Every now and again, a horse comes along that shines a bright light onto something and makes you wonder why you hadn't had that thought before. Annie is one such horse. For many years, we have known that our chelated calcium has helped deal with difficult behaviour in mares. We always thought it was in their head. Annie shows clearly that her hormones are involved, and not just her sex hormones, insulin and probably pituitary gland hormones too. Pam Martin has been involved with competition horses and training all her life, and she tells Annie's nightmare to schoolmistress story.
Annie's a 17-year-old Anglo-Arab mare, about 14.3. She's been out of work now for 8 years, had a foal, had a great deal of trouble getting in foal the first time, but then we realised that she actually would come into season and then just run away from the stallion because she was out in the paddock. So we brought her home and brought the stallion back with us and actually hand served her here. Then she had the foal, but she had the foal extremely fast, and her troubles really began from there. She stopped cycling properly. She would come into season 20 days in a row and go off for 2. She turns around, you can hear her from inside the house, and she's at least 60 metres away from the house behind buildings, squealing, biting her flanks and kicking at herself, and she gets so grumpy. She's a very alert mare, she's quite hot to ride, not naughty but quite steamy and hot to ride. She'll just bounce on the spot, but there's no buck and rear in her. And once we put her on to CCC, and I actually put her on to start with because she had found it, and I put her on it simply because I wanted to quieten her down and see what would happen. So I put her on to CCC, and she was quite founded, couldn't walk, standing back on her hindquarters with her front feet out. Her coronet bands had actually started to sink, and she was getting rings on her feet, and she'd been pulled off all feed except a handful of lucerne. So from there I turned around and fed her CC, and in 2 days this mare had started to walk. I had not done anything but this, and she turned around, and in a week she was trotting around the paddock as if she hadn't been lame. Her coronet bands actually came back up and stopped sinking, and she got no rings except the one original ring on her hooves. From there she just came back to normal. She started going. She actually started to get quite a nice top line. Her coat came right out and she went quite daftly, and she was on basically dirt in this CCC on a loading dose with just 2 handfuls of chaff a day, which was probably, if she's lucky, 1/4 of a kilo of decent chaff. But the main things were her cycling just started to come normal, and she wasn't always, this mare's always been on alert like a little watchdog walking around the paddock, and if she runs to you, you've got to step out of the road. She'll run straight over the top of you. Well, she'd run to you, and she was happy. Her eyes were much bigger and softer and happier, and she'd go to sleep under a tree, which she just doesn't do. And she was just a lot happier and calmer in herself. And I've now got some young girls that are starting to ride her. So she hasn't been ridden in 8 years. We lunged her. She'd been on CC for a week, a double loading. Lunged her, I'd say, five runs round one way, trotting. Cantered the other way because she decided she liked this. About 8 times, pulled her up, popped her little kid on, and I would never have done this with her before. And we only walked her, but she walked around. She was as happy as Larry, and for a horse that hasn't been in work and is as hot as her, I'm quite amazed, and she just settled down and got on with the job. So I'm quite thrilled with that.
Nerve cells use calcium cellular signalling to switch on a huge range of their important functions. When this goes wrong, brain function is impaired and a variety of behavioural problems can appear. Our belief is that VCAL chelated calcium improves the functioning of this process, so enables the cells in the brain to work better. But Annie has made it abundantly clear that other cells that use calcium cellular signalling can also be impaired by a lack of chelated calcium. In her story, that means the hormone-producing cells of the adrenal glands and ovaries, and probably more, such as the pituitary gland. Whether you want better behaviour, improved reproductive performance, or a decrease in hormone-related illnesses, consider using a supplement containing our patented VCAL chelated calcium, such as Cool, Calm and Collected, Sensible Essentials or Winning Edge. Pam used our mag-free cool carton collected because the rest of her horse's diet already had plenty of magnesium in it. If you ring our experienced advice team, they will evaluate your horse's feed and see which of our products will work best with your current diet. Our cheerful team is with you all the way to ensure you get a great result.